The global chorus of voices against a unilateral U.S. strike on Syria has grown louder after the G20 summit in St. Petersburg. Even France, which earlier backed unconditional U.S. action, now says it will wait for the results of the UN's probes into the alleged use of chemical weapons in Syria. Now, the leaders of 10 countries did agree with Washington that some sort of action needs to be taken. The British Prime Minister also on the list, despite being rebuffed by his own parliament. Russia's call against intervention was strongly backed by 6 nations, including economic heavyweights, China and India. But when it comes to the voice of the people, the U.S. finds itself vastly outnumbered. World leaders opposing the war represent nations of more than 3 billion people, while the politicians in favor of a strike stand on the shoulders of less than 1 billion. Even in the U.S. itself, the latest polls show most Americans are against intervention, while Congress remains split over the volatile issue. RT's Anissa Nawe has more on the outcome of the G20 summit.
I was elected to end wars, not start them.
U.S. military intervention in Syria dominated talks at the G20. But if Obama was looking to gather overwhelming support at the summit, he didn't get it in St. Petersburg.
There is no military solution to the Syrian conflict.
There is no military solution.
We will not participate in military action.
Aside from France, Turkey and Saudi Arabia, few countries expressed outright support for Obama's proposal of a military strike. In a joint statement, they condemned the use of chemical weapons, blaming the Assad government, and called for some kind of response, but they stopped short of backing a U.S. attack on Syria. Summit host President Putin accused the rebels of being behind a chemical weapons attack near Damascus in August that he says was carried out to discredit Syrian authorities in the eyes of the West.
I view everything that happened with the so-called use of chemical weapons in Syria as a provocation by the rebels who count on help from abroad, from those countries that originally supported them. That's the reason for this provocation. I also want to remind you that the use of force against a sovereign state is acceptable only if it's done for self-defense, and we know that Syria hasn't attacked the US, and only if the UN Security Council approves such action. As one of the participants of our discussions on the issue put it yesterday, those who do otherwise put themselves above the law.
Obama continues to insist Assad was behind the attack, and he won't wait for the UN to respond.
And the Assad's regime's brazen use of chemical weapons isn't just a Syrian tragedy. It's a threat to global peace and security.
The U.S. president is due to address the American public on Tuesday and try to make his best argument for an attack on Syria, one that failed to convince global partners at the G20.